That's right. I decided to go ahead and play both intros since it's me and Phil today. But, anyways, hello everyone, and welcome back to Fandomology, where fandoms collide. And we are going to be picking up where we left off with our discussion of Fellowship of the Ring. Now, before we go any further, we do got to address the elephant in the room. Yes, I did try and do this stream once before by myself, and suffice to say, it didn't go very well. So that stream got taken down. We're trying again tonight, and this time, my partner in crime, Mr. Phil McCracken, the true king and god of Pop Talk, is here to help me.
Thank you. And thank you for the warm welcome.
So, we're basically going to pick up where we left off. So, for those that missed part one, this is sort of a long form discussion series of streams that we're doing about the Lord of the Rings movies and how well they adapted the books. So we're still in the middle. We're still in like the first half of Fellowship. The last stream left off with us discussing the hobbits leaving Bree with Aragorn. So we're going to pick up from there. So the four hobbits set out from Bree with Aragorn. And right away, I want to talk about this one line, Phil, because I have a feeling it came from the book, but it was used in a different way. And it's the scene where Merry asks Pippin, how do we know this Strider is a friend of Gandalf? And Frodo replies, you would think a servant of the enemy would look fairer but feel fouler. Is that from the books?
Not word for word, but very similar.
Okay, so what was the context behind it in the book?
It's pretty much worded just a little bit different, but the overall message is the same.
Okay.
The overall message is the same. Pretty much, Aragorn looks like he is a robber or thief or mugger, whatever. He doesn't give an appearance that, he a ranger or some type of lord or anything like that. He doesn't have that aura about him. So,
right.
And if you know anything about how the flip of the coin of Sauron, how he tries to look angelic like an elf before the deceiver, evil people try to hide their evilness by looking the opposite way. So,
and you want to talk about a real world parable with that one? That's applicable to today's society.
I mean, it was even done for when Tolkien wrote it. Even done previously before Tolkien. The idea is, like I said, just because someone gives the appearance or the aura of goodliness, shall we say, sometimes tend to be evil. It's a classic. Don't judge a book by its cover.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
So we see some snapshots, of course, of the hobbits traveling through the different parts of the wilderness with Aragorn, and of course he tells them, I'm taking you to Rivendell. And of course Sam's super excited because he wants to see the elves. Meanwhile, we see Sauron having correspondence with Sauron through the Palantir, and it's here that we see Sauron start his work on what would become his army of Uruk-hai, of course, starting with the trees, and we see Gandalf still on top of the tower. And again, another brilliant metaphor of how evil corrupts, because look at what Isengard looked like when Gandalf first arrived there. It was green, it was beautiful. I mean, yeah, that tower is a very obvious symbol of power, but around it, Sauron had gardens, he had forests. Now here he is destroying it.
That was a Numenorian tower. That was built by the remnant of Numenor when they left Numenor after it sunk in the ocean. And that was part at one time of the Kingdom of Gondor. They gave it to Sauron as since when he came over from the Undying Lands because he was technically the head of the Order of the Wizards.
Right.
And when you touch upon Sauron's communication with Sauron, you have to remember what's going on that they don't do in either of the movies. Sauron
Okay.
is himself right after, if you go by the movies, right after the last part of The Hobbit, he is looking for the ring for himself.
Right.
So you like we were telling you before, there is, you have Sauron, you have Saruman, you have Gandalf, you have Aragon. They're all looking for this ring.
Mm-hmm.
They're all looking for it. And Sauron gets the idea. Gandalf has the knowledge or the guess of where the ring is.
Which is why
So,
he keeps him on top of the tower.
gotcha. And you have to remember, uh, the wizards are lesser Valar. They're the Maiar. Sauron, Solomon, all the wizards, them six are lesser angelic beings. So if they take the ring, even if it corrupts them, that would make them powerful beings. Not maybe as powerful as Manwë, and the Valinor over back in the Undying Lands, but they would be pretty much unstoppable.
Right. And real
So,
quick, I want to say hello to DJ Ronnie G, who says can't have Sauron without Ron. By the way, DJ, are you wearing a white t-shirt for Phil?
yeah. He surprised me one day. He was wearing a silver and black t-shirt. So he's
Oh,
starting to get
wow.
some color in his life. He's
I'm
getting color
shocked.
coordinated, you know. So all's good there in Turtle World.
Nice. He says, this is awkward. So while of course this is going on, we get the line, what about second breakfast, which was that accurate to the book?
I don't remember that statement, but you have to remember in how can I would say in English, more English than saying UK. Let's say English etiquette.
Oh, got it, DJ.
You
Okay.
say lunch, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Well, for
Mm-hmm.
them, lunch is different. Supper, they have all these different terms. So, but not to the extent that the hobbits go. First breakfast, second breakfast. Not to that
Of
extent.
course.
Like tea time. Tea time is pretty much close to lunchtime. Equivalent to ours.
So eventually they make camp for the night, and of course Aragorn goes out and shoots a deer for them to eat. Later on, Frodo's awakened by hearing Aragorn singing about Luthien. So what's the story behind? So obviously Beren and Luthien, that's a whole other book that Tolkien wrote, but why would Aragorn be singing that song?
Because he's a descendant of Bremen and Luthien. His ring is the one with the two lizards devouring each other. That's Bremen's ring. That's where it comes from.
If I'm not mistaken, that's called an Ouroboros. Is that right?
There's a fancy word for it. I don't recall the name of it, but the history behind the ring is every descendant going from, I believe, Beren and Luthien. That includes Elrond and his brother's parents. There's a long history of that ring.
Right.
It's more than just the king of or the house of what Aragorn belongs to from Numenor. But you have to remember, even in Numenor, um, the house that he's from, yes, there were a line of kings that go all the way to Elrond's brother, but that line doesn't, similar to what happened with Gondor, instead of stewards, another line of kings took over.
Right.
So just think of this as the right, even when Numenor, they were the rightful heirs of that particular house. See, there's three houses of men that go to Numenor, and Beren and Luthien belong to one house, and keep going. A similar thing is they always seem to have twins. There's always a set of twins. Elrond and his brother are not the only set of twins. Elrond has twin sons. His another descendant going back in the line has another set of twins. And you have to remember, Elrond's lineage is Aragorn's lineage.
Right.
So that ring holds it's a very important, let's just say, if it's not in the hand of a king, it belongs to a very powerful house or person that comes from that group.
Right.
Okay.
So after this scene, eventually the hobbits and Aragorn make it to Weathertop, and they make camp there. And this is where, of course, Aragorn first gives them the swords. He goes out to scout around, and we see eventually the ring wraiths catch up to them there after getting alerted by Mary's cooking.
Right.
And so we have the first showdown between the ring wraiths and the hobbits here. And here's something I always wondered about this scene. Obviously, Sam stands his ground and gets tossed aside. Same with Merry and Pippin. I don't like how they portrayed what Frodo did, because he just drops the sword and falls back in terror. And I know for a fact that that's not accurate to the book. Is that correct?
No, the ring wraiths have this ability to put the fear not just in the animals but into humans. You know, when you hear later on in the movie and you hear their dragon mounts, if you want to call them that, make that sound, that's not only the dragon or whatever they're riding, but let's call them lizard riders or whatever.
Yeah.
The ring wraiths make that sound, and that puts terror into people, and that terror causes fear. So if Frodo heard that, he's going to be in terror because he's not a warrior. Even Aragorn probably would take a moment to be a little scared. And yeah, you know, it's realistic. The whole scene on Weathertop is very important because not only because of the location they go to. That see, in the movies you don't know about it without going to the book. That's a battle. There was a battle there with the Northern Kingdom against the leader of the ring wraiths,
the Witch King.
The Witch King. And he pretty much destroys the Northern Kingdom. And the Weathertop was call it like a fort that was protecting what remained of the Northern Kingdom, because it splits in three. And that Northern Kingdom held back the Witch King until it fell. So, but that battle was very important, and pretty much, you know, let's just say the Nazgul is drawn to that area, so they're very familiar with it, especially the Witch King. So,
okay,
if they have an inkling that somebody's taking the ring, and if they're going anywhere, they're going to try to go to the elves. And going from where the hobbits are, Hobbiton, to go to Rivendell, which they don't have an idea where it's at, but they can guess, they would have to go through Weathertop. But that's what's a mistake in the movie they show, because remember, they kind of were noisy. So yeah, they were, if they were listening to Aragorn, what he said, or A.K. Strider, to remain quiet. Well, the hobbits weren't quiet.
Right.
So
So Frodo, he gets backed into a corner and ultimately puts the ring on. And we see what the ring wraiths look like to anyone who's wearing the ring. And then Frodo, of course, gets stabbed. Another thing that I just thought of in rewatching the scene in preparation for this stream, why did the Witch King specifically use that dagger to stab Frodo? He was already holding his sword. Was it because of the poison?
no, because it would have mattered if he stabbed with the sword or he stabbed with the dagger. Either or. It's the importance of that's what happens and why that stab is important. When Frodo gets stabbed like that by that Nazgul weapon,
Mm-hmm.
if he doesn't get healed, he will turn pretty much into let's call him a Hoblet Nazgul. He'll be he'll lose his free will.
Which to imagine that,
Mm-hmm.
I know Strider says it just after this scene. He's passing into the shadow world. He'll soon become a wraith like them.
Yep.
Just imagining what that would do to someone physically.
Well, it's the main reason why he ends up at the very end of this journey, why he can't stay on Middle Earth. He's got to go to the Undying Lands. He's that wound. Yeah, it's been healed, but it's forever changed him. And the best thing that could be done is it can heal. Like I said, Elrond heals him, but it doesn't stop it.
Right.
When he goes to Undying Lands, and mind you have to remember this: if he goes to the Undying Lands, anybody goes to the Undying Lands. Only the elves technically are allowed. There are certain exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Frodo is one of them exceptions. Just because he goes to the Undying Lands doesn't mean he doesn't die. The only thing he goes when he goes to the Undying Lands is that he gets to live the rest of his life in peace and good health.
Right.
But he will die in the Undying Lands. And only the ones that like I said, the elves are the only ones that do not die. Technically.
And real quick, I want to say hello to Black Dragon, who says the ring transports you into the ring wraith dimension, and the dagger is special. I forget the name. The name of it, yep, you got it. Morgul Dagger Blade of the Nazgul. Anyways, just after this, in comes Strider to fend off the ring wraiths, and we learn that one of the ring wraiths' weaknesses is fire, and he's able to burn away the 5 that were there, including one cool shot of him throwing the torch and landing it in the hood of one of them. So they rush off to get to Rivendell as fast as they can to get Frodo healed. While this is going on, we go back to Isengard that has just had a complete night and day transformation. All of the forests, all the gardens are gone. Everything is basically just a wasteland of industry, which I know that Tolkien probably did it that way. And of course, Peter Jackson made it that way to show maybe I'm reading it wrong, but could that be like an allegory to how Tolkien saw the increasing mechanization of the world as a bad thing, overthrowing nature, you could say?
You have to remember he experienced World War I. He was in the trenches, and modernization does have its benefits.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, modernization means better weapons, more death. Your industry is making shells, destroying the landscape when they're doing the. If you ever look at them at a World War I battlefield after the battle, you see total devastation. There's nothing green there. I mean, if you go there now, it's green, but there was nothing green, just a sea of death. You know, so I think it's more a warning of how advancement sometimes leads to, yes, there's some good, but also some bad, and the bad things tend to be bigger death. You know, it's bigger
True.
death. You know, look at it this way, and I'll try to make it short as possible. World War One, World War Two. You fight battles wherever you fought battles. Before that, it's technically you wouldn't necessarily fight in a city. You'll find a piece of ground outside the city to fight the battle.
Like how the Revolutionary War and the
Yeah, pretty
Civil
much.
War was
Think like
mostly fought.
Waterloo. You know, Waterloo is pretty much farmland. Yeah, Gettysburg outside the city, it's farmland.
Hmm.
Fredericksburg, which is close to you, it was now it's built up because the towns got bigger. But back then, that was out way outside the town. Well, World
Right.
War One changed most of that. You know, the battles were in the cities, in wherever the trench went. If it went through a city, so be it. You know, World War II even more so. You know, there was, technically they were bombing the front lines and in the civilians. So,
Yeah.
and that's all due to the ability of modernization. You know, so yes, there's some good things with modernization, but there's also bad. So I think Tolkien's more telling people when he's saying stuff like that. You have to be wary of the bad parts of, plus and minuses in life. And then
Right.
particularly with modernization, because modernization can, if it goes out of control, people die.
And of course, Peter Jackson and whoever it was that like did the cinematography for that shot, I think captured Tolkien's vision of that absolutely perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So while all this is going on, we go down deeper underground under Isengard and see like the full scope of what the orcs are doing and basically building as Sauron requested an army worthy of Mordor. We see the weapons getting made, the armor getting made, and even the soldiers getting made with the Uruk-hai down in those mud pits. And that that was like one of the scenes when I first saw it as a kid that just I don't know what the right word here is to use. It was unsettling, disgusting to watch as a kid. Now it's still, it's still pretty gross, but it is what it is. Then
So
after
you didn't like
this,
them crawling around in the mud bubbles?
no, I didn't. I was like, how does that work? They're literally making orcs out of mud. Of course,
I don't think
that
it. I don't. I think it's just interpretation. Uh, there are people that question: are there female orcs? Okay, and that's a good question. Well, think of
DJ
it this
says
way.
less gross than watching Gollum eat.
Okay. Well, look at it this way. If orgs are technically elves that Morgoth has twisted and reshapen into orgs, then if the elves have male and female, then if elves have male and female, then the orgs have to have male and female.
Yeah.
We might not have anything by Peter Jackson describing it. I guess that's left up into interpretation. That's the best way to say it. Maybe a female org, laid eggs. I don't know. Maybe Morgoth did something that made female can lay eggs.
You
Only
heard it
thing we
here.
know for sure is Morgoth, Sauron's original boss and first evil lord. He even in during the first age and into the second. Well, in the first age, he during that whole period of time, that's thousands of years,
Mm-hmm.
he was still trying. He would capture humans, he would capture elves, he would capture dwarves, and do I don't want to say experiments, but let's just say he works his evil magic. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So got you like I said, it's an interpretation. I mean, you don't want to show orgs being made how it's made in our people are made in our
No,
world. Yeah.
absolutely not.
Okay, so this is just a fancy interpretation for you.
Right.
A clean version. Let's just say
Yeah.
that.
Like
But
I realize that now, but of course in childhood I was like, that doesn't make sense.
no, you have to remember Tolkien is trying to keep things PG as much
Of
as
course.
possible.
Of course. So after this, we get back to the hobbits and Strider, and they happen to be stopped at the very same place where Bilbo and Thorin and company had the encounter with the three trolls. I don't think that's accurate to the book, is it? That's like an Easter egg that the movie threw in.
Hmm. I'm trying to remember. I don't recall. Well, with the orgs with Bobo, that did happen.
Right.
But I wouldn't. I'm not sure if they would be taking the same road necessarily or going to track the same way as Bobo was going towards the Misty Mountains. But it's possible.
Yeah, I mean it
It's
makes
possible.
sense to me
I
that
don't.
three.
Like I said, I don't recall it in the book Lord of the Rings, but I might be mistaken. You know,
Yeah.
last time I read that book, I don't remember it, but
Oh,
I do like.
okay, he says it is in the book. Okay, thank you. Tell you what, Black Dragon, I'm gonna shoot you the link. Let you come on in here with us, because you might have some information that me and Phil aren't aware of. Where is? All right, there you go. So it's here that we see, of course, how bad a shape that Frodo's in. His skin is going very pale. And his eyes are starting to go pale. He's making these weird gasping noises, and Sam and Strider work together to find Kingsfoil, which is apparently a plant that can help slow the poisoning. While doing this, and I know you're about to harp on this one, Strider gets snuck up on from behind by Elrond's daughter, Arwen, who he happens to be in love with. I know in the books that wasn't Arwen, right? That was Glorfindel, right?
Pretty much, yes. And like I said, if I can understand why certain characters didn't make it into the movie,
Mm-hmm.
right? Aragon's twin sons and Glorfindel. But yeah, that's Glorfindel that pretty much comes to the rescue of Aragon and Frodo and the hobbits.
So,
and he's the one that summons the water because Nazgul, the one thing they fear is water. Because let's just put it this way: the one Valinor that still comes to Middle Earth, even after the battle to defeat Morgoth, is Ormo, the Lord of the Sea. So yeah, he's very important, and elves have a very special tie to him. That's why they have the ability to control water like they do, and why the Nazgul fear water. They won't cross water.
So real quick on that water thing. Before we even get into that, let me ask you this. Why do you think Peter Jackson made the call to replace Glorfindel with Arwen?
I think before the movie even start, he intended not to have Glorfindel there, not to have Elrond's twin sons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not going to have Glorfindel there, you need somebody to fill that role.
Right, which we gotta touch on this too. The Ralph Bakshi version also didn't have Glorfindel. Instead, it was Legolas that was the one to help Frodo get to Rivendell. Although he just started the journey, Frodo finished it himself. I know that's way inaccurate to the book. And so,
like, you have to remember, and I'm trying not to hold you up by doing this.
it's all right.
There is a lot of inaccuracies between the book and the movie, like any other book.
Right.
Harry Potter is the same way. Star Wars is the same way. There are diehard Tolkien fans that are mad because certain things like this have been changed.
Mm-hmm.
And even Peter Jackson, when you first watch Lord of the Rings, when it first comes on and you see the Battle of the Last Alliance, you see the High King of the Elves. But you don't see him in the movies, the rest of the movie. You only see him there. You have no clue who it is. Now, a person watching a movie, learning Lord of the Rings, does not know that there's a High King of the Elves. He gets killed alongside with what's his name? Erundi.
Right. Isn't he the one that gets burned alive?
Yes,
something?
he gets burned alive. So if you're watching the Battle of the Last Alliance and you see Elrond, you automatically think, well, Elrond must be the leader of the elves. No, he's not.
And real quick, Black Dragon says because Glorfindel is actually a minor character, but the storyline was important.
Glorfindel is a major character. He's even a major character in the Second Age with the fall of Gondolin. He's so important that he gets re-embodied and sent back along with the wizards to come back to Middle-earth.
Whoa.
Wow. So he's not minor. He is far from being minor. So I'm not trying to ridicule you, Black Dragon, or anything, but Glorfindel is not a minor character. You know.
So
if you were putting him with the elves, even in the Third Age, if you're going by the book, he's the main person for the elves.
So, of course, Arwen takes Frodo on her horse, and they ride toward Rivendell. The Ringwraiths are chasing him. We get to the river, and of course, the Ringwraiths are washed away. Now, you mentioned that it was Glorfindel that summoned the big tidal wave that takes them out. In the movie, Gandalf basically says it was him and Elrond that did that. Now, here's something I didn't understand in the movies. I know this is accurate to the book. Why did the water take the shape of horses?
You know, if you're going to use Ormo as the god of the sea, you would think they would probably show images of dolphins.
Then people would be making fun of that, and it's Aquaman.
Yeah, well, the thing I did, the only thing I could guess was they went with horses, and probably maybe they were easy to CGI. That's the only guess I got for it. You know, again, it's a guess. I would have been happy if they didn't show any images of horses or any other thing. Just show the water.
Yeah, I think that would have been.
But I think they wanted to give a magical feel. So by showing an image of something, you get, the horses, you feel it's magical.
Right. I believe you already addressed this one, Phil, but he says he's a major character in the Second Age, but minor in the Third.
He's very important in the battles of the North while everything's going down there in Gondor. Glorfindel. See, if you don't read all the books, you don't know. Okay, you have to, and I hate to skip, but while everything's going down with Frodo going to Mordor, Gandalf and the rest are going to Rohan to the south, there's major fights up in the north.
They've made an entire game about one of those campaigns.
Yeah. I mean, and Gryffindor is up there. He's up there with Legolas's dad. What's her name? Who's the High Queen of the Elves? One of the High Queen.
Galadriel?
Galadriel. Her husband is up there fighting. There's like major battles. They're fighting over in Gondor. They're fighting outside the Dale. There are major battles. That's why the elves can't really in the book. They don't send no help to the south because them and the dwarves are too busy fighting in the north.
Mm-hmm.
While everything's going down the south, you got men from Ruin over to the east. They're attacking the north. You know, it's chess. It's a world war. Think of it that way. We only
Right.
see what's going down in the south. We don't have any knowledge in the movies of what's going on to the north.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the King of Men in the north, Dales, and the new king, I guess, out of the Hobbit of dwarves, they
Dan
both get
Ironfoot.
killed. Yeah, he gets killed. They both get killed in the battle. They both
Right.
get killed. So it isn't. Yeah, like I said, in the movies, yeah, it's non-existent. In the books, it's existent. You know, it's very existent. But like I said, this is only focusing on what's going on with the Fellowship of the Ring and what's going on in the south. They don't focus on to the north.
Right. So back to the movie, and Black Dragon real quick says he was prominent in the Silmarillion. Frodo wakes up in Rivendell. He's okay. He is quote unquote healed from the wound, although the wound is still there. It's just not actively poisoning him. And Gandalf is there. He's fine. And we see what happened to Gandalf and how he got away. One thing I forgot to mention in the last flashback to Isengard was Gandalf, again on top of the tower, catches a moth in his hand, whispers some instructions to it, and the moth goes and finds his friend Gwaihir the eagle. And here we see Sauron again just tossing Gandalf around like a rag doll on top of the tower, and in comes the eagle and rescues Gandalf. That you said was Radagast, right?
Okay. What happens there? And again, Peter Jackson at the time didn't put Radagast in the Lord of the Rings, even though in the book he's there.
Mm-hmm.
Radagast is summoned by Sauron to find Gandalf and to summon him to Isengard. So Radagast goes about, and why he splits from and doesn't meet Frodo at Bree is because Radagast finds him on the road and tells him, "You need to go to see Saruman at Isengard."
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Radagast goes back to Mirkwood. He goes to Isengard, and what happens in the movie pretty much happens the same way. But he's trapped on top of that tower after he gets defeated. The moth doesn't appear. No. What happens is Radagast asked the Lord of the Eagles to report to Saruman what's going on, the movement of the troops in the north. Because again, that's important. They're fighting in the north. So he sends an eagle there, and the eagle, when he reaches the tower, sees Gandalf there. And that's how Gandalf gets away. So, in a sense, Radagast gets him captured, but then again, Radagast is the one technically that saves him.
Right.
Unintentional both ways. So, and that's the last you ever hear of Radagast. You'll never hear from him or anything about him ever again.
I mean, the game that I mentioned earlier, Lord of the Rings War in the North,
Yeah.
does feature him in that game, and you have to actually rescue him from some of the spiders of Mirkwood. And real quick, Black Dragon.
It's not. You have to remember the War in the North is a good video game. Some of them they got from the book, but some of it, like the Radagast part, isn't canonical or isn't canon.
Right.
So,
And Black Dragon, he's referring to Saruman, just similar names. So after Frodo is able to get on his feet, he of course reunites with Sam and Merry and Pippin, and he reunites with Bilbo, who, to quote him, it seems as though age has finally caught up with him. Bilbo is now walking with a cane, and he looks way older. While this is going on, Gandalf and Elrond are talking, and I believe, if I'm understanding the conversation correct, Gandalf was trying to convince Elrond to let the ring stay in Rivendell. Is that correct?
movie, yes. Movie, yes.
Okay.
Book, no. Nobody can control the ring besides Sauron.
Which even
Now,
the movie
somebody
says.
like Saruman might been able to control it a little bit, maybe a little bit more than others, but it's still Sauron's ring, you know. So even him leaving it in the hands of the elves, and you get a little bit from it when Elrond says we don't have the power to hide this ring.
I was about to ask about that because I know there is some form of, I guess, shield charm, you could say, almost, over Isengard that protects it from the forces of evil. At least that's the way I understand it. Is that correct?
Not really, no. That's just a man built by the survivors of Numenor by Gondor. Built that. It was called Orthanc.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it was a tower intended to hold one of the Palantirs. That was the main purpose of that tower. But, you know, over time, Gondor lost population, lost control. That's why they gave Rohan to the Rohirrim. And that's why Gondor, when the wizards came over, gave Sauron Isengard.
Okay.
So because there was no people living there, the population has started to decrease and fall. So that they couldn't control it anyway. So, but as far as like any magical thing, just other than a sturdy building, you know, that's all it was, a very sturdy building.
Okay. So while Gandalf and Elrond are talking, real quick, hello to Blazerhawk Darren, who says, "Hey there, Paul and Phil, in the middle of uploading a subscriber shout out video. Awesome." And of course, hello to Tim's Talk, who says Spock is not on. No, unfortunately, he is not. I haven't heard from Spock in a while. But anyways, while Gandalf and Elrond are talking, actually, hold on, I gotta backtrack just a hair. This is also where Elrond tells his point of view of the Battle of the Last Alliance, where Isildur claims the ring and he leads Isildur to Mount Doom, and Isildur refuses to throw the ring in.
Yeah, there were reasons why, unfortunately, he felt he couldn't destroy the ring. And it wasn't just the ring held sway over him. He had lost his father. In the books, he also lost his brother in that war.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you have to remember him and his father and his brother and most of his people had just survived the sinking of Numenor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And pretty much now his family is just him and his two sons. So, and now he's not just the king. He was co-king with his brother in Gondor, but his father ruled the northern kingdom, Anor. Now, after this whole battle with Sauron and defeating him, he's now king of both. Okay, so now he's got more responsibility and not much help besides his two sons. So he sees it as a war trophy. That's what he sees it.
Okay.
But
Because yeah,
the funny thing is, after he gets the ring, he doesn't put it on until the moment before he dies. When you see the death scene of him, when the orcs ambush him, he's going to Rivendell to see Elrond, and he's bringing the shard of the sword of his father that got broken,
mhm,
and he's bringing the ring, but he's not giving it to Elrond. But you have to remember, Elrond is technically his great 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 thousand great uncle, so it's family. So when he's going up there, and he doesn't take a big enough army with him, he takes his two sons, and everybody gets killed.
yeah.
Everybody pretty much gets killed, but one man that holds the shards of Narsil,
Mhm.
and that's it. And and that's not the reason why the line of men are broken. There's a bunch of other kings there, and it doesn't end until one of the kings duels the Witch King, and no one hears from him again. But it
Right.
doesn't. The line doesn't get broken by Isildur. No.
Okay. So like I said, while Gandalf and Elrond are talking, we see a lot of important players start showing up to Rivendell. By this point, of course, Aragorn has gotten there. Legolas and his entourage arrives. So do Gimli and the dwarves, and so does Boromir and his entourage. Now, I do very much remember that Gloin is with, of course, Gimli and the dwarves, and he actually has something of a "Hey, how you doing?" conversation with Frodo. I don't remember what the conversation was about beyond that, but I do know that the book made a big deal of it. But of course, we don't see Gloin in the movie at all.
Gryffindor is also there.
Right.
And just like you said, there's a big gathering. And if you notice, it's all the pretty much you got the Legolas representing the elves from Mirkwood,
Mm-hmm.
Elrond, the elves in Rivendell. You don't get a representative of the elves from Lothlorien, as far as we know, book or movie wise. You get Aragorn because the Dunedain and Rangers are the remnant of the Northern Kingdom. That's why he's there.
Right.
Even though they're small in numbers. Then you get Gondor, which is men. Rohan does not get a representative there because technically Rohan is what you would call vassal state of Gondor.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you only get the dwarves from the 3 of the 6 tribes of dwarves. So there's only 3 on, you would say, on the good side. The other 3 are to the east. And normally they don't work together. Very rarely do all 6 get, work on the same. Unless it's pertaining to all dwarfdom, they tend to be 3, on odds with each other. That's
Right.
why you only see 3 in the movie representing them.
So while all this is going on, later on that night, we see kind of an awkward introduction to Boromir and Aragorn, where the two first meet each other. And I know this is not accurate to the book because you already said it in the last part. In the book, Aragorn already has the shards of Narsil with him, but in the book, but in the movie, they're on display here in Rivendell.
He's
Boromir picks it up and
carrying the
accidentally gets
broken.
cut.
He's carrying the broken hilt of the sword.
Mm-hmm.
And in the movie, I mean, it's not, but in the book and the cartoon, Baskin Robbins, they have him swinging the sword. I don't think realistically that broken sword could do anything. That was more for show. Okay.
Right.
But you have to remember the council, when he assembled everybody for that great meeting, the previous thing was the White Council. Well, they can't summon the White Council because who was the head of the White Council?
Saruman, and
Right.
he's
And
now
now he
evil.
switched over, or you can say on his own, but semi with Sauron. So they can't. The White Council's done. So this is the free people of Middle Earth. That's it. So you can take it from there. Then I'll add some more about the council, the difference.
That's okay. So, like I said, Boromir picks up the sword. It's still sharp, as he says, and he accidentally cuts himself on it and just disrespectfully tosses it aside. Which, why would he do that?
That's movie. That's movie. I guess they're showing him. I'm the son of the Stewart. We don't have a king anymore. So I'm the next big honcho. And you have to remember where him and his brother, which the movie doesn't touch on.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part of Gondor that have elf and man that's been mixed. They've been married into each other. And his mom has some elf blood. So that means Faramir and Boromir have some elf in them, just like Gandalf. I mean, not Gandalf, Aragorn. They have elf. The Prince of, I forget, Doris, I think that's the name of the town out there. You don't hear about him in the movie, but he's big in the book. Mm-hmm. So, this is an example. You see Boromir act like, in the movie, not really that friendly with the elves, which wouldn't be quite that way because his mom and him and his brother got elf blood in them. It wouldn't be that unfriendly like they try to portray him in the movie. So again, you gotta understand Peter Jackson. If he included everything in the book, that movie never would end. So but some things you have to understand why he's acting now that way according to the movie, as opposed to how he would act in the book.
Like a jealousy sort of thing.
Yeah, he wouldn't have been jealous of... I mean, he would have known rumors of Aragorn, but he wouldn't care one way or the other because, Aragorn's not king. The chances of him becoming king is slim to none. And as far as ability and everything, he got elf blood just like Aragorn. Yeah, he might have been from Numenor, but he got elf blood too.
Right. So with that, we then get some flirty scenes between Arwen and Aragorn, again, just to show how they love each other. And it's been one of those scenes that Aragorn is gifted the necklace, and Arwen basically makes it official that she's choosing to live a mortal life so that she can be with who she loves. And there's some scenes that they show kind of around this time, but they don't come until the Two Towers movie, so we're going to hold those for later. And then we get the big meeting.
Just remember the difference in the book. At this time when they're having this big meeting and the profession of love between Aragorn and what's her name? Forgot her name.
Arwen.
Elrond goes to Aragorn and pretty much does similar to the movie. Try to persuade him, hey, this is not a good idea. But he sees and he can tell with both of them that's their paths are going to be intertwined. Mm-hmm. So Elrond does the next best thing. My daughter is highborn, and in order for her to marry you, you have to be king. And if you're not king, she ain't marrying you. And technically saying, you have to remember, in order for him to be king, technically, he's got to defeat Sauron, he's got to win over Gondor, and he's got to reestablish the northern kingdom of Anor.
And basically rebuild the sword along with that too.
Everything along with that, and the chances are slim to none. Mm-hmm. But like his great 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 grandfather. I can't say his name tonight. I got tongue tied. Beren and Luthien. Beren
Yeah.
ordered to marry Luthien, her father, the king of the elves, or one of the kings of the elves, tells him, in order to win her hand, you better go to Morgoth and steal one of the Summer Elves.
Right.
And he does the impossible. He goes there and gets one of the Summer Elves. Well, Aragorn gets that same drive. He's determined that he's going to do it. So.
Mm-hmm. So with that, like I said, the big meeting happens, and this is where, of course, at first, once he sees the ring, Boromir tries to convince everyone, hey, give the ring to Gondor because we're the ones that have been putting in the work, being literally a border country to Mordor. We've been the ones putting in the work to keep you guys safe, so we need to be the one to use it against the enemy. Aragorn, of course, says this is a stupid idea. The ring only answers to Sauron, and it's here that it's revealed who Aragorn really is. And it's also here where Elrond tells everyone that the ring has to be destroyed. And it has to be destroyed by taking the ring to Mount Doom, throwing it into the fire.
The only place where it was created is the only place where it can be destroyed.
Yes. So,
yeah, but I will tell you this. There's a lot of people that have debated this. There could have been another option.
Oh?
And it's the one that Saruman feared. That the ring ended up in the river and went out to the ocean. If it got lost in the ocean, pretty much impossible to find. And a lot of people speculate if somebody had thrown it in the ocean, that would have been it. One of the Summer Elves gets thrown in the ocean. You ain't finding that. One gets thrown when one of the brothers jump into a molten pit, so it gets sent into the center of the earth. And the third one is where Aralindi up in the sky with his boat. Supposed to be a star. So, yeah. So if somebody would have took that ring and threw it in the ocean, might have did some good, but that would not have destroyed Sauron.
No. Which, if I'm not mistaken, even destroying the ring and, well, that we'll get to that when we get there. So a big argument breaks out on what the best course of action is to do. Boromir, of course, doesn't think that the ring can be destroyed in this manner. The meme. It's the meme. One does not simply walk into Mordor. A whole big argument breaks out, and ultimately Frodo is the one to speak up and say, I'll do it. And thus people are quick to volunteer to help him. And thus the Fellowship is formed, which includes Frodo, Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Sam, Merry, and Pippin.
In the book, originally, Elrond wanted Glorfindel to be part of the Fellowship. And he turns it down because he's a known hero. Sauron knows who he is. And when you're doing a secret mission, you don't want popular people that have that's going to draw too much attention. So that's one of the reasons he, in the book, turns it down. He doesn't go. And I'm not sure if it's Gandalf that they send to replace him, or if it's Legolas replacing him for the elves. It could be one or the other. I believe more it's Gandalf replacing him, because if Glorfindel had went with him, he would have been in charge, and Gandalf ended up being in charge. So, But Glorfindel in the book was, during the council, was going to Elrond, and others wanted him to be in charge of the Fellowship. And he said, no, it's got to be people that are able to be low key. And his presence, and he's right. If he would disappear from the north to go try to do a secret mission, Sauron's people in the north would know, okay, well, Gryffindor's gone. It'd be the equivalent of imagining Eisenhower pulling a disappearing act from the European theater and shows up in the Pacific. Could it be done? Yes. But would you even want to do that? Because, he's the figurehead there. You see what I'm saying? So Glorfindel couldn't do that, even if he wanted to. So,
real quick, Black Dragon says, if I remember correctly in the book, Frodo didn't volunteer to be the Ring Bearer, but it's been about 30 years since I read them.
If I remember correctly, Frodo really didn't want to do any parts. The hobbits really didn't want to do any parts. Besides Bobo staying in Rivendell,
of course,
they wanted to go home. But I think it was Gandalf that kind of persuaded him to go, because hobbits have the ability, not totally, but more than any other race of people, to resist the ring.
Right.
So if there was going to be anybody to do it, pretty much Frodo was already doing it anyway, so he might as well finish it out.
Exactly.
So I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was persuaded to do it. And that's kind of similar to what happens in the movie. Aragorn can't pick it, Legolas can't pick it, even Gandalf can't pick it.
Right. He even said so earlier in the movie.
And Gandalf is a Maiar. He's a lesser angel. So if he couldn't take it without, just like he says, if I take the ring, I'm going to take it for the ideal of doing good, but it will turn out evil. So the only person really besides Frodo, and you couldn't send old man Bobo there.
No, he's past his prime at that point.
So it's Frodo or nobody. And you can't just say, okay, I'll give it to Sam or Merry or Pippin. Frodo was the right man for the job. He had the common sense and the know-it-all. Pippin would have dropped it the first time. He would probably even try to hold it. Merry, maybe Merry, but Sam, yeah, I think he would have tried. But like I said, it had to have been Frodo or nobody.
So I have a question, and this is kind of an interesting what if here. What if Gandalf had realized what the ring was when Bilbo had it in The Hobbit? Do you think he would have tried to convince Bilbo to immediately go to Mount Doom after everything he was doing in Erebor?
No. First thing Gandalf would have done was leave it alone, not say anything. I think if he would have known it sooner, he would have reported it to Saruman, which probably would have led to trouble. Or he would have done similar what he tried to do when they first left, when he had Frodo and them leave Hobbiton, and when they bumped into Tom Bombadil, tried to give it to Tom Bombadil, who didn't have any effect with the ring, but he really didn't care. He just, the ring just was, okay, big deal. Here, take it back, do what you're doing. Think of him like a dungeon master. He doesn't get involved. He's there. He's a powerful being, but he's not involved. He's just not involved. So if he would have did anything sooner, he would have probably, if Gandalf took the ring from Bobo, I think he would have first tried to give it to Tom Bombadil. And the same thing would have happened. He would have played around with it and said, here you go. Take it with you. Okay. So that would have been shot down. So the next thing he would have done was reported to the White Council. And since Saruman is in charge, he would have probably gave it to him. So things happen, let's just say, just like in our world, things happen for a reason. Things happen for a reason. Same thing in the book.
Right. So everyone's making preparations to leave, and we see Bilbo give a gift to Frodo before he leaves. 2 gifts, actually. First off, he gives Frodo Sting, the sword that Bilbo had found in the caves of the goblins that he used, of
Gandalf
course.
found.
Oh, that's right, Gandalf. I forgot about
Gandalf
that.
gave it to him.
Yeah, Gandalf found it in the cave of the trolls.
The trolls
And
had apparently got a hold of. Maybe they looted the remains of Gondolin. That was the Helping Kingdom that Morgoth destroyed.
right.
And all them weapons that you seen there came from Gondolin. And you don't know, you never hear anything about, you hear about the other weapons, the one that Gandalf takes and Thorin takes. The little, they called it letter opener. You don't hear anything about it. They don't even give it, it doesn't have a name. They end up giving it a name.
Yep.
But you don't know who that could have belonged to because, just like in real life, warriors in medieval times, they didn't just carry a sword, they carried a dagger in case they lost their sword.
Well,
so
with that, it was, now keep in mind, of course, consider the source, but the game Shadow of Mordor and specifically Shadow of Mordor in the DLC where you're playing as Celebrimbor implied that Sting initially belonged to Celebrimbor and was basically the offhand weapon to a larger version of Sting that Celebrimbor used as his main sword.
The thing about Celebrimbor, he was in Umbridor, outside Rivendell. Okay. And that place gets destroyed. That's Third Age. Second Age, Gondolin gets destroyed. And that horde doesn't come from Celebrimbor's town or city, wherever he was there in Umbridor, but comes from Gondolin. That's all Second Age. So I know I love the 2 games, but yeah, no, it wouldn't have come from there. How would it even got there? Celebrimbor was originally in the Grey Havens until he moved to Rivendell. He never was in Gondolin.
Right.
So, you have to understand it's open to interpretation. The game can say, but there's no history on it, but it had to come from Gondolin,
Right. Which, in case you're wondering, Phil, I still have not yet touched those games. I still got a lot to get through.
I understand. There's a reason, though. You have to remember some of them are good games, good history behind it, but most of it isn't canon.
Right. And real quick, DJ says, in the movies, that scene where Sam held the ring was about a day long. Did that happen in the book? It did, but that's Return of the King, and we'll get to that later.
Just remember, time-wise, just real quick. DJ, just going from Frodo leaving the Hobbiton to go to Rivendell is months. To go from Rivendell to even to the end of where the movie ends on The Lord of the Rings, that's months. This whole process takes a whole year. Years, if I'm correct. I think it's 3 years, might be 2, but it's around that ballpark. It isn't like the movie, it seems like a day. No, much longer.
Right. So with that, again, we see Frodo receive the gifts from Bilbo, and as he's putting on the Mithril shirt, we see Bilbo see the ring for the first time in what had to have been years at this point, and he is like, I really want to see that ring one more time. And okay, so help me out here, Phil. We see Bilbo in the movie undergo like a really dark, momentary physical transformation, almost looking like Gollum as he's lunging for the ring.
Well,
the transformation, is that accurate to the book?
I don't think that part is in the book where he turns to that little, he does that little heh, and he looks like his face gets warped in and all, like he's possessed.
Uh-huh.
No. But you have to remember, if Gollum Smeagol once was similar, if not a hobbit or similar to a hobbit himself, and the ring changed him over thousands of years, not hundreds, not a decade, thousands of years, what it would do to another hobbit.
True.
And you get that scene. I know we can't. I'm gonna have to jump there. You do get a scene of what would happen to Frodo in similar circumstances. They actually show it.
They do.
Yes.
And it's tragic to see.
Yeah, because again, overall, unless you're maybe a Maiar or a Valinor, you cannot control this ring. And even a Maiar like Gandalf can't control this ring. Again, he might be able to try to do good with it, but eventually it will turn him evil. It's Sauron in the ring. There's nothing good you can end up doing in the end that's going to become okay. Well, I can keep the ring and nothing's going to happen. No.
Right. So Bilbo lashes out, tries to get his hands on the ring one more time, but then once he's realized what he's done wrong, he apologizes for basically getting Frodo into this whole mess. I'm sorry, I'm sorry you're doing this. I'm sorry you have to carry this burden, etc., etc. And we also see in the extended edition, they added this in the extended edition, a scene of Elrond offering to have the sword reforged for Aragorn, but he basically says no thanks. So after this, the Fellowship officially departs Rivendell, and so far, well, starting out, the journey goes okay. But then they get surprised by I don't remember what the official term is, so I'm just going to say a flock of birds. A huge flock of birds. Crows.
Yep.
That are spies of Sauron.
And you have to remember, one of the wizards, Radagast, he was an aide to the Valinor that is charge of plants and animals. Hence his ability to communicate and, I don't want to say control, but pretty much plants and animals. And you have to ask yourself, how did Sauron get the ability to control the birds? And a lot of people speculate that maybe he was the one that did Radagast in, if Radagast isn't alive, and maybe absorbed his power. Or, maybe some other dark secrets we don't know about. But normally, like I said, when we were talking about Gandalf being on top of the tower, that's Radagast sending a bird, one of the eagles, asking the eagles to go there unintentionally to save Gandalf. Well, again, here we have Saruman sending birds to spy out, which really isn't his forte.
Mm-hmm.
He served another Valinor. They're like gods of, I don't want to call them gods, but they have abilities like gods in Greek Roman mythology. This one's a metalsmith, this one's for love, and this one's for, well, it's kind of similar. And actually, Sauron, and I believe it's Gandalf, or it could have been Saruman, one of the two, had actually served a similar Valinor. So they had met each other in the Undying Lands. if they didn't know each other when they were first created, when Iluvatar was doing the song to did creation.
Mm-hmm.
So, where did Sauron learn the ability to summon animals? But at that time, that was Radagast's forte.
Right.
So,
And real quick, Black Dragon is bringing it up. He says, from the time when Bilbo left Hobbiton to the time Frodo left Hobbiton, Gandalf did the research for 17 years.
yeah, we discussed that the last time when it shows in the movie when he leaves Frodo and goes to Gondor, that it was a long period of time before he comes back.
Right.
Yeah.
So
again, you have to remember all this doesn't take place in a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. This is years.
So with that, they deduce that they can't take the route they were taking because that was being watched. So they have to take the pass of Caradhas through the snow. And this is also where we get our first tease of Boromir desiring the ring, at least since Rivendell. And Aragorn has to basically borderline threaten Boromir to give the ring back to Frodo. Like, he's got his hand on his sword ready to throw down. And Boromir tries to pass it off like it meant nothing, but if he had let it, he would have put the ring on. But later on, they get caught in a blizzard that Saruman is manipulating from Orthanc to try and crush them in an avalanche. And thus, seeing no other choice, Frodo, hearing Gimli, who had been putting in an input this whole time, that the mines of Moria would be the best way to go. Quote, my cousin Balin would give us a royal welcome. But Gandalf wanted to avoid Moria.
There was another option. And even in the movie, there was another option.
The Gap of Rohan.
The Gap of Rohan. But they were scared to take it anywhere near Sauron's base of Isengard.
Right, because either his spies would have spotted them or he himself probably could have sensed the presence of the ring. Wouldn't you say?
Yep. Well, you gotta remember, about this time, he still knows Gandalf was friends with the hobbits. So he's putting two together. If I find Gandalf, there's the hobbit, I find the ring. So does he know that the dwarves failed in taking back Moria with what's his name, Balin's attempt? Now he temporarily gets some of the rooms there, but he then gets defeated.
Right.
Does Sauron know that goblins pretty much are in control of Moria again? And and you got to remember, Gimli don't know. He presumes Balin is doing good there, taking it back. So, yeah, I guess hindsight's 2020. Maybe they should have made the attempt to the Gap of Rohan. But yeah, at the time, that was the lesser of two evils. So,
of course. So they get off the mountain and they start heading toward Moria, and they include a scene in the extended edition of Gandalf checking up on Frodo, and of course warning him that as they get further and further into the journey, the ring is going to start growing more and more in power, and Frodo's going to start having some people try and come after the ring from outside and inside the Fellowship. So after this comes the scene where they finally make the approach to Moria, and they figure out the way to open the door, but then the Watcher in the Water attacks them, which I remember finding out that the Watcher of the Water was also responsible for killing one of the original 13 dwarves, Owen. So, real quick, what was the story behind that?
Well, let's just say Watchers is a monster. Maybe it doesn't say, but more implied. Morgoth had created a lot of warped. He took living things and probably twisted them, just like he did the elves to orcs. This was probably an octopus, or maybe or some type of sea creature that normally was docile, but now, since he Morgoth twisted it, to what it is, and it had to be Morgoth because the dwarf that he kills is in the first stage, or it might be towards the beginning of the second, right there, but close enough. And apparently, the dwarves didn't realize the Watcher was in the water all that time, and somehow, some way, the Watcher knew which one was most important, and he ends up killing it.
Right.
And once they killed it, what they tended to do was keep that door in particularly closed. So that door is forever, was in their minds forever closed. We're not going to use it. It's done. Hence, they had the other entrance that you see in The Hobbit, and the one where Aragorn leaves out that way. So there was only one way in, one way out. So when the orgs went in there and took it over, the orgs are going to be dug in there. They're not going to come out. Had they had two entrances, they could have had two choices of the dwarves. When you see Thorn and his dad and his grandfather try to take it back, they only had one place to attack, and that's the main entrance. They weren't going to go to the side entrance because that Watcher, the Watcher there, would have wiped them out.
Right.
So you say, it benefited the goblins in a lot of ways.
Yes.
So, and again, you notice the goblins didn't even protect that area because they knew about the Watcher. So that area, they never suspect anybody coming through that door.
Right.
If they would have came, they would have came out the door that Aragorn and them leave. And when you see the battle that they have in The Hobbit with the dwarfs, it's that main entrance there.
So they get locked inside the mines by the Watcher in the water, and they start making their way through. And it's here that, at least in the movie, I don't know if it's like this in the book, but in the movie, Gandalf takes the time to explain why Moria was basically the dwarven kingdom to end all dwarven kingdoms because of their riches in mithril mining. And we also get a reference back to the Hobbits, where Gandalf mentioned the mithril shirt that Thorin had given him, and even Gimli comments on that.
That he given Bobo.
Exactly. Later on, of course, they're all sitting down as Gandalf's trying to figure out which way to go, and Frodo notices that Gollum is following them. And he has a conversation with Gandalf about that, where Frodo says, I wish Bilbo had killed him when he had the chance. No. He says, quote, it's a pity that Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance. When Gandalf pointed out it was pity that caused Bilbo not to do it.
And you'll notice that because of that, things end up probably the best way, that Frodo didn't kill Gollum.
That is true.
We'll discuss it at the end because you can debate on who is the real hero.
Yeah, I mean,
you have to remember, it's the Gollum. Would you call him the anti-hero, the true hero, the victim? Let's just say Gollum's he's just at this point. He Smeagol is long gone. The life that he had as he was living as what you would call a hobbit, long gone. And the only thing he cares in his life, the only thing he has, and you have to remember, he lived 1,000 years with just him in this ring.
which is mind-blowing.
Yeah. I mean, that would drive any of us insane. So
Yeah.
he's already insane, but he's sane enough to know the power of the ring without anybody explaining to him the power of the ring.
Exactly.
You know, so he's not, even though he's insane, he's not stupid.
That's that reminds me of one of my famous quotes. I'm not brave, but I am stupid.
You know, I mean, give him credit. You know, they don't show it in the book on the movie, but in the book, when Gandalf sends Aragorn to capture Gollum after he's starting to put two and two together, Aragorn captures him, takes him to Legolas's dad, the elves in Mirkwood, to hold him there for questioning, and give Gollum credit. He was able to break out. But he still knew that to go, he knew the name of Finding Baggins.
Yes.
Which ends up helping him in a way because he gets caught by Sauron's forces, who the Witch King and company take him to Minas Morgul and torture him. Mm-hmm. And again, the only thing that gets him off the hook is saying Baggins and Shire. And then they let him go because what use is him? You know, but had they followed him, had the Nazgul been smart, say, this guy knows how to find a ring. Let's follow him instead of going hunting for the Hobbit. You know, they might have found the ring.
They might have.
Smeagol knew where to find a ring. It was like, I won't say he had a sense, but he had an intuition where to find it.
That is true.
He finds them in Moria. He was smart enough to follow them through Lothlorien, where the elves are, another group of elves with Galadriel. He was able to follow them down river all the way almost to the entrance to the kingdom of Gondor. And then was able to track down Frodo and Sam as they're starting to make their way into Mordor. You know? Mm-hmm. So he's not dumb. He's not stupid enough not to know how to follow and where to get his ring back. You know?
That is true.
So, and again, that's an important character building of Gollum. Do you feel sorry for him? There's points where you hate him. So he's able to pull all the emotions of a person reading a story and shows how in-depth the character was.
Exactly.
So, we can agree that he is the most tragic character in these three books.
Easily.
Let's just put it that way. I wouldn't say the most tragic of all of Tolkien's Middle-earth, but he's probably number 2. There's another person more tragic.
Yes. So after this conversation, after this little snippet, Gandalf has that conversation that he has with Gandalf has that conversation he has with Frodo, basically saying, I wish the ring had never come to me. And Gandalf is the one that said, Bilbo was meant to find the ring just as you were meant to have it. And that is an encouraging thought. What was encouraging about that? I don't understand.
Okay. And I'll try to do my best to explain it. Just like we have God here in our world, mm-hmm. You have Eru Libentar, who is practically God in Middle-earth. Okay. And just like our actual God is a good God, he is a good God. So by making fate happen the way it did and putting the ring in Gollum's hand, took a little faith, took a little divine intervention. Getting Frodo the ring, little faith, mm-hmm. Little divine intervention there. And then getting it to Frodo. Look, had it fallen in the hands of a man, it would have made its way back to Saruman, no problem. You know,
right?
Either Saruman or Sauron would have had the ring, and either way, either or of them two getting the ring is bad news for everybody. Okay.
Yes.
So what Gandalf's saying is, out of all the creatures, let's put, I don't want to say intelligent, all the men, dwarfs, elves, of all the creatures, it ended up into a hobbit's hands. Hobbits aren't on war. They're not out to conquer anybody. They're not trying to do anything like that. They're just happy, merry people.
Mm-hmm.
So to get that ring in the hands of them, who just so happens to have the ability to resist the power of the ring, that has to be, you would have to say, a little bit of Eru Libitar, pulling strings.
Yeah.
So that's what Gandalf's trying to say. There's a little divine magic here, or divine intervention here. Somebody's helping us along here, and it might be the big man up there. So,
okay, that makes sense then.
I'm trying to make sense of it because it's hard to explain religion enough in our world. Here, you got to do the same thing, which is kind of similar. Fate. Let's just say that overall, fate. It's just fate, and fate's working on their side. I mean, look at it this way: that ring could have, when Isildur got killed, the orcs could have took it. Okay, would have handed it, end up in Sauron or Saruman's hand. Saruman could have got it. How many times did so many close calls? And the only thing you can say, it's either luck or divine intervention. And if Gandalf's a representative of a Maiar, he's a lesser angel, then Eru Libitar has to exist, and he's pushing everything along. So, and he does it. He'll end up going to do it in a big way in a few moments when you get there.
Right.
We'll talk about it.
So, Gandalf remembers the direction they go. They go down the stairs, and they find basically the main hall of the Dwarven city. They're walking through, and Gimli spots something tragic, and he runs up to find the tomb of his cousin Balin, and he is in pieces. And of course, they're looking around, and Gandalf finds a book that was being held onto by, and I didn't find this out till recently, the corpse of Ori, the youngest of the original 13, who was the scribe. He finds a book where he was basically keeping log of that ongoing struggle they had in trying to retake Moria. And
the room they're in, they got forced in that one room. That's pretty much their last stand. And Balin already got killed. So while they're trapped in there, they again apparently had enough time to build him a stone sarcophagus, you can say.
Right.
Magically, they had enough time to do that. But okay. But they're pretty much trapped in that room. And the goblins and their trolls are getting ready to break through, pretty much similar to what's going to happen. And they all get wiped out.
Yes. And
the only thing you can tell, the reason why that happens that way, is because they're coming. We hear them pounding on the door. They're coming. Mm-hmm. And then his last right is, they've broken through the door. They're here.
Yep.
So, pretty much Balin, in his attempt to take back Moria, was able to take as much as far as the main hall. He didn't get all of it. But then the goblins and the trolls were able to defeat him. And what remnant was left was trapped in that one little room until they were wiped out.
Right.
So.
And then at this moment, Pippin, and I know this isn't entirely accurate to the book. It's a different sequence, but Pippin knocks the bucket into the well, which makes the big noise, and we get the classic "fool of a took, throw yourself in next time and rid us of your stupidity." And that is what wakes up the orcs that were levels down below them. And I gotta say, the scene where you start hearing the drums down there
Mm.
is so well done and just how creepy it is.
I wouldn't say woke them up. Let's just say they now got the attention. Somebody is up there that's not supposed to be upstairs.
Right.
You know, because you got to remember, there's the main door. The door they came through was a door that neither dwarf would enter because of the creature, and the other thing is because, oh, somebody got through, so something's going on because they ain't getting through that main door. It's a miracle they got out through the main door. So
Right. So the orcs start making their way up to where the tomb is, and of course, everyone barricades themselves in. And just as a side note, this is the first time in the movies we get to see Sting glow blue, which they did a great job of showing that. And the orcs break in, and we have a battle.
Before you do that, I have to mention this one thing. When Boromir says, "Oh, they brought a cave troll," that's a registered trademark line. So anytime you try to use that line, if somebody wants to use it in anything, Warner Brothers is going to get paid for it, because that line, believe it or not, is a registered trademark.
Which makes me wonder, that was a movie thing only, right?
Mhm.
That's not a book thing.
That's why Warner Brothers has had a registered trademark. Because people take lines from movies and jokingly, like you say, Luke Skywalker, "I am your father." Well, that's not a registered trademark. Peter Jackson and crew probably were smart and say, well, we're going to use that line, and if we use that line, we're going to trademark it. So, yeah, anybody wants to make a spoof or do something with that line, that is a registered trademark.
So with that, eventually the cave troll comes in and is just wreaking havoc. And while the orcs themselves are easy to take down, easy enough for those that know what they're doing, the cave troll is just completely being a one troll demolition crew. And eventually the troll gets its notice of Frodo and starts targeting him and manages to run it through. He manages to run Frodo through with a giant spear, and this is a fake out, of course. Everyone thinks that Frodo is once again dying, and this causes the rest of the Fellowship to fight harder. Legolas gets the killing shot, but turns out, surprise, surprise, that Frodo is just fine because of the Mithril shirt. But more orcs are coming, so they have to rush out of the tomb and get back to the main hall where at least they have a more fighting chance. And we see orcs literally coming out of every possible way, even climbing up from the floor and climbing on the ceiling, which I question that. I have a hard time believing that the orcs would be able to hold on to the ceiling like that and crawl like insects. It looks cool. It absolutely looks cool. I just don't quite believe that.
Maybe there's things in nature that one frog's poisonous, the other one isn't. Flying rats, which we call them bats. Maybe these versions of goblins have ability to, they're able to crawl. A goat, which you would never expect, can literally climb and jump onto the smallest cliffs, pieces of rock. A person couldn't do it without support of a rope. These goats can climb up a sheer straight up cliff that's going north to south, up and down.
Right.
With no ledges. And you're asking, how do these goats are able to do it? Maybe it's just something genetically that they can do. That's the only guess I can got for you.
Which, fair enough. So the Fellowship is completely surrounded, but suddenly there's this loud but low growl. And at the far end of the hallway, it starts glowing orange, and all of the orcs run away. And Gandalf immediately realizes what this is, a Balrog. And they start running through the rest of the city, and the whole thing starts to collapse and the Balrog's chasing them. This is, of course, where we get the scene where they're tossing people across the gap. No one tosses a dwarf. Which, was that in the book at all, or is that
No,
just movie?
no, that
I
part, no, that line wasn't in there.
I thought so. So eventually they get to the bridge, and this is where we see the Balrog, like, actually see what it looks like. And oh my goodness, it is terrifying. Is that what you imagined a Balrog would look like?
Well, you get the idea when you read the other books, because a lot of people fought the Balrogs. One of
Mhm.
the High Kings gets defeated by a Balrog. Glorfindel kills a Balrog as he's leading the Revenant out of Gondolin. Hence, one of the reasons why he's able to be reincarnated, and not just reincarnated, but sent back to Middle Earth, because
Right.
he did something very heroic. So there's only 2 times I ever known anybody in the books to defeat a Balrog, and that is Gandalf and Glorfindel. Now, there are battles, like the big battle to end Morgoth. There were Balrogs there, and at the Siege of Gondolin. But officially, that you know of, you can only know 2 people that by name defeated them. And you have to remember what a Balrog is. A Balrog is a Maiar, just like Gandalf and Sauron, that have fallen to join Morgoth, and hence they were, in their transformation, turned to Balrogs. So that could be another reason why Gandalf was able to sense and know that, hey, this guy's a Maiar, might be a Balrog, but he's a Maiar there, and I'm a Maiar too, so I can sense, I can sense him.
Right.
So hence the reason, maybe even before he went into Moria, he could still sense that Balrog, aka Maiar, is there. So,
I mean, he knew
mhm.
ahead of it, because there was that one scene where, and so we got to backtrack a little bit back to the snowstorm, and they're discussing what to do, whether or not to go into Moria, and we get that scene of Saruman narrating almost Gandalf's thoughts.
Right, because he knew. Because again, even Saruman, he's also a Maiar.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When they come to Earth, Middle Earth, they are transformed to appear older, and even though you might say a little bit weaker than what they were over in Valinor, but if you notice, they're still more powerful than regular humans. Okay? So when they're dealing with a Maiar, and you're a Maiar, I'm pretty sure one of the abilities they have apparently is to know, okay, well, there's a Maiar there. Sauron, again, he's a Maiar. He knows, just like Gandalf knows. You know what's in that bottom of that Moria. You know they woke it up because they dug too deep. Why did they dug too deep? They were after the Mithril. When Morgoth was defeated, a lot of the Balrogs, you can say, went underground, because that's the only place they can hide from the Maiar and the Valinor after Morgoth was defeated. Sauron really didn't have control over them. Morgoth did. So with Morgoth being defeated and pushed out into prison and out of the world, they don't answer to Saruman. And you have to remember, what's Gandalf's biggest fear even before the Lord of the Rings, even leading up? He was worried about the dragon, Smaug, joining Sauron. Again,
Right.
Smaug isn't a servant of Sauron. He's a servant of Morgoth.
Mm-hmm.
But Gandalf was so in fear that, hey, if that dragon joins with him, our chances of winning is small. What do you think would have happened if he was able to get the dragon and the Balrog?
Oh, he would have been unstoppable.
Pretty much. And you got to remember, the dragon is not a Maiar. That that Balrog is a Maiar. So fallen Maiar, but and you got to remember, Gandalf was probably saying to himself, and probably in Sauron, leave that alone. If, as evil as Sauron is, he's telling them, leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he didn't have a choice in the matter. Well,
Right.
I guess he did have a choice. He could have said, let's go through the Gap of Rohan. But you have to remember, Gandalf, even through all this adventure, he can't make the decisions. It's
Frodo has
for
to.
the people of Middle Earth to make the decision. That's why he lets Frodo decide. If he was to be in charge and take control, then it isn't. See, the Valinor only sent the wizards, the Maiar, whatever you want to call them, over here to help, to influence them, to encourage. It's up to men, elf, dwarves, and the people of Middle Earth to defeat Sauron.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, Morgoth was a different story. The Valinor came over to help defeat him. Sauron's a different beast. They're not going to interfere. The only one that even comes over to any time in Middle Earth after the First Age is the Omo, the god of the sea. So you're not getting any help beside them 5 wizards. And at that time, you only technically had 1, maybe 2 that's helping. And I guarantee you their rules are not to interfere. You can help, you can join with, but you can't make choices and decisions for. Gandalf never makes the choices. If you ever notice, he leaves that up to them. He'll help them out, he'll follow them through, give advice, but he is not saying, okay, we're going to lead an army into Mordor. You elves are going to go do this. You dwarves are going to go do that. Aragorn and men are going to do this. He doesn't do none of that. He doesn't do that. Even with the plan to destroy the ring, that's not Gandalf's plan. That's Elrond's plan. You see, it's Gandalf cannot make choices for the peoples of Middle Earth. That's something he doesn't do. He encourages us. He'll tell people, okay, you can't negotiate with Sauron. You can't join with Sauron. He's not going to share power with you. He's not going to help you, and he's not going to make peace with you. You have one choice and one choice only: unite and defeat him. Period. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing that, when they create the character of Gandalf, and he goes for all the Maiar before Sauron falls, their job is to help Middle Earth. Okay? Now, a lot of people will say Radagast failed in that job. Radagast wasn't sent over here, believe it or not, to lead armies or to do what Gandalf, Sauron, and the Blue Wizards did. He was sent over by the Valinor that was in charge of the earth, as in growing things, plants, and animals. And if you notice, they stuck to that with in The Hobbit. That's what his concern. Yes, he'll help. Yes, he'll do his part, but his concern is plants and animals.
Mm-hmm.
So, not to be off track, but that's very important to put in there that Gandalf does not make the choices.
No, it's fine. So they get to the bridge, and of course, everyone makes it across the bridge except Gandalf, who chooses to stop in the middle of the bridge and basically forbid the Balrog from going any further. Now, this is where we get the big speech from Gandalf to the Balrog. In fact, I'm going to read this word for word because I've seen people break this down before, and I want you to do that, Phil, as to what it was that he was saying, what it was that he was basically really saying. I just got to. So here's what he says. Quote, "You cannot pass," he said. The orcs stood still, and a dead silence fell. "I am a servant of the secret fire. Wielder of the flame of Anor, you cannot pass. The dark file will not avail you, flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow, you cannot pass. So break that down for us, Phil.
First, he's not. Yes, he's speaking to the Balrog, but he's actually speaking to the Maiar, and he's letting him know.
Hey, Jace.
Okay. When he says, "I am the servant of the eternal flame,"
Something
am I
like
correct
that.
in that?
A servant of the secret fire.
Okay, that's Elru Iluvatar, and the power of creation is a symbol of fire.
Mhm.
So he's a servant of Elru Iluvatar. Okay, pretty much God in Middle Earth, and he's telling him, "Look, I am a loyal servant." He's the Belrog is no longer that Maiar is no longer a loyal servant. He's a servant of Morgoth. So already Gandalf is expressing his authority. Okay, you cannot pass. That means you're not getting past me, and I have the power to stop you. You have a choice: go back to the hole that you came back in the bottom of the Middle Earth, or pretty much you're going to get defeated.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the simplest way to put it. And if you notice, he kind of the Belrog in the movie. All right, you don't have a visual image in the book. In the movie, the Belrog looks like, oh my, he might take that advice, but then he does that little thing with the whip.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Gandalf thought, maybe I got through to him. He's just going to go in this little hole. He wants to live and survive. Let him live and survive. But no, he was going to take him out.
That is actually not how I saw that. I saw it the complete opposite way. I saw him pull the whip out and then like just give a little snort after Gandalf finished his speech, saying, "Huh, what do those words mean to me?"
But Gandalf actually turns like he's going to walk and follow the rest out.
Oh no, I'm not even. This is before that. This is before the bridge actually breaks.
Oh yeah, when he gave the snort, but then after the snort and when Gandalf turns, I think for that little bit of a moment, Gandalf thought, okay, I might have gotten through where he's just going to go in his hole and I'm going to just keep on walking out of here. Because Gandalf wasn't prepared for that whip to turn around and grab him by the ankle.
Right.
And
so real quick before you go further, of course, the bridge collapses, the Balrog falls in, and that's when he hits him with the whip.
Yeah. And then you get a fight from the old Battle of the First Age. Maiar versus Maiar.
But that's, at least movie, that as far as the movies are concerned, that's all gets handled in Two Towers.
Yeah.
The last we see of Gandalf for Fellowship is him clinging to the edge of the bridge where it broke, saying, "Fly, you fools," and he falls.
There is a part that we missed when Gandalf, where Aragorn looked like he was going to take on the Balrog, and he pretty much tells him, "You're powerless here. You need to get out of here."
Mm-hmm. That swords are no more use here. I remember that
because as you know, being a Dunedain, Blast of Numenor, and they are powerful as human beings because, again, they have a little mixture of elf blood.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing compared to a Balrog, a living Maiar. Okay,
exactly.
No, the only one that could take him is Gandalf. So, yeah.
So, as I said, Gandalf falls, and the Fellowship is able to escape Moria. And Phil, I think that's where we're going to stop for
That's
tonight.
a good place to stop. I mean, like I said, when we first were talking, this was going to be, it wasn't going to be short.
Of course not.
Yeah. And like I said, we talked 4 parts and we managed to at least get the second part done.
Right. So next time we gather, which we'll talk about that after the stream, Phil, but next time we gather, it'll basically be Lothlorien to the end of Fellowship, which
Yep.
should not take as long as it did today because we actually covered more than I thought we would. I told you we were going to get from, at minimum, from Bree to Moria, and we got to the end of Moria.
Just remember, like I told you last time, and say it again here, if you're just covering the theatrical release, yeah, we can get this done a lot quicker. Even and then when you move to, okay, we're going to do the extended version. Well, there's a little add-on, so unfortunately you have to explain. But when you're doing both of that and comparing it to the book, there's a lot in there. Like I said, there's a lot of things that happen in the movies, extended version or not. You have no understanding unless you read the book. You just don't. So unfortunately, yeah, this isn't. When you're going through the Lord of the Rings, it's very in depth.
Exactly.
And there are some things even along this little short of a journey that we didn't talk and discuss because it's a lot to forget. It's a lot to remember, and if we went word for word, detail to detail, we'd be probably here 10, 12 hours.
Exactly.
So, we try to throw in as much in there from the book, what's different from the book, what's different in the movie, and explanations that if you're just watching the movies, you won't understand. All right, Brendan and Lorien, you won't understand that. You wouldn't understand Morgoth because he's never talked about in the movie.
Right.
So, but they all play a part, even in the movie, even if they're not showed in the movie, their effect in the Middle Earth, even after the Second Age, the First Age, still plays an effect in what's going to happen. And that's very important because Tolkien in his writing during this time, he got done World War I. But if you notice, just like the movie in Lord of the Rings, what happened when they defeated Sauron the first time, they didn't defeat him all the way. And that's kind of like what happened in World War I. And then you had to redo another World War to do what we didn't do in the first one to do in the second one. So it's pretty much parallel to what happened in our own timeline as what Tolkien's comparing in their timeline. So, and it gets very confusing unless you take your time and discuss it, read it,
Well, I'm definitely enjoying revisiting the world of Tolkien. It had been a long time since I had seen these movies before I started rewatching them for this. And so it's going to be fun talking about this further. So, like I said, Phil, we will talk about this after stream as far as when we want to tackle the final part of Fellowship. But for now, thank you, of course, for being on here with me. And everyone, go subscribe if you haven't already to the Release McCracken YouTube channel. We want to get him. If I'm trying to get to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year, let's get him to 500. We can do it. But in the meantime, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will talk to you later.